I am up and recording. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Lexcia podcast. Wesley Pepper here. This is episode 192. So that's great. So I'm closing in on 200 episodes. That's great. To all my new and returning listeners, if you haven't already, I'd appreciate this. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. I would appreciate that. Today we're actually talking about, a theatre production, but essentially it's about the Nkosi Haven. As you guys know, it's Nelson Mandela Month. Yeah, so this event is sort of related to that. And we got an acclaimed guest with us today, so that's going to be very cool. So let's get into it. Firstly, Dick Scanlan, firstly, my brother, welcome. Good
Good
morning.
morning to you,
And
Wesley. It's
how are
nice
you?
to be on your show. I'm doing great.
Fantastic, man. Thanks, my brother. Thanks for taking the time out. So let's start at the beginning before we get into the actual, because we're going to be reviewing the show. Nkosi Haven, fantastic initiative. Yeah, tell us a little about it and your involvement with it.
Well, Nkosi Haven was started in 1999 by Nkosi Johnson, who at that time was 10 years old, and his adoptive mother, Gail Johnson. Nkosi Johnson, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, became a very famous anti-HIV/AIDS stigma activist during his short life, culminating in his speech in Durban at the International AIDS Conference. And his own mother, his biological mother, had died when he was 2 or 2.5. And before he died, he said to his adoptive mother that he thought it was so sad that when children got sick, they were separated from their mothers, so that the mothers would be taken off to die separate from their children. And Gail said, well, why don't we do something about that? So together they started a home for mothers with children, mothers with HIV/AIDS and their children. And this was before the days of ARVs, so the mothers would come. Usually they would eventually pass, and the children would stay at Nkosi Haven and be raised by that community. Fortunately, just over 20 years ago, ARVs arrived in South Africa, and now the moms are very much living. So it's a community of mothers with HIV/AIDS and their children, other children who've been orphaned or abandoned because of HIV/AIDS. And then during COVID, we expanded the charter to include victims of gender-based violence. So there are also families who are not there for HIV reasons, but are there for GBV reasons. And my involvement is I'm a person with AIDS. And about 15 years ago, I decided I wanted to work with children living with the virus to sort of say to them, look, what's happening in your body is happening in my body. And I've been able to build a very nice life in spite of it, and so can you. And I knew about Nkosi Johnson. He was famous in America, where I am. And I heard about Nkosi Haven, so I reached out to see if we could form a partnership where I would bring Broadway artists along with African artists to Nkosi Haven for 3 weeks every year during the kids' winter break. And we would devise a theater piece that we present at the Market Theater Lab in Johannesburg. So that's what we do. And over the years, I've become very close with the community, and I'm now on the board of Nkosi Haven.
Okay, interesting. It's just a sort of a side note. I've actually been noticing that HIV/AIDS has been making a lot of headlines recently. I actually read an article, in fact, yesterday, on sort of an uptake. There's been some form of a spike of infections. Just for interest sake, is that concern?
Yes, I mean it is. It's not surprising, but it's alarming. The reason I say it's not surprising is that now young people coming up and becoming sexually active and sexually curious, as young people are supposed to do, they see HIV/AIDS as a manageable disease, not as a terminal disease. So they're less rigorous about practicing safer sex. They're more likely to have sex without a condom, or not ask a partner what their HIV status is. And that's when you see transmission increase. They are not wrong that HIV in many cases is a manageable disease, but there are many, because I'm someone who lives with it, there are many other aspects of HIV disease that are not fun. And if you can avoid it, you should at all costs. The drugs themselves take a toll on your body and hurt your heart and your liver and other organs. And there's a lot of data that people on long-term ARVs don't live as long. So it benefits everybody to try and protect themselves from getting infected, but I'm not wholly surprised that young people who are rash around issues of sexuality sort of don't pay attention to that, and therefore you're seeing an uptick in spread in new infections.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just want to add on to that. As an art student in the early 2000s, we actually did a bunch of programs, projects, and so forth around HIV/AIDS. And I noticed, so what's this? Just maybe less than 20 years ago. And since then, what is this? The 1st of December used to be AIDS Day, and I don't even think in South Africa we have that anymore. At least not to my knowledge, especially since COVID. Is COVID sort of just sort of silenced everything, and as I say, all of a sudden now there's a serious spike, and actually I have lost people. A very dear friend of mine, about time flies, about more than 10 years ago, due to HIV and AIDS.
The other piece of that
it's
puzzle,
still
Wesley, I
it's
think is
still
important
rampant.
to say, is because of this perception of HIV/AIDS being manageable, funding for HIV/AIDS causes across the board, whether it's research, people living with the virus, any aspect of it is down globally. This isn't just South Africa, it's also true here. The moment you say I'm raising money for an HIV/AIDS related cause,
Interesting.
the potential funder just glazes over and is like, I did that, or that was last decade's cause. Give me the new, but the reality, there are a lot of people still living with the virus who need help.
22,000. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to touch on that, because I say it's kind of in the news right now. So tell us a little bit about Art Inside Out.
Well, it's
Is that a
artINSIDEOUT
separate
is the
initiative?
program I started 15 years ago. It is for an arts outreach program. It's very large. It is a team this year of 23 artists, and we work with everyone at the community at Nkosi Haven from age 2 and up. So we have toddlers classes for the kids who are 2 to 5. We have classes for kids who are 6 to 11. Preteens classes are 12 to 14. Teenagers go all the way up to 22, 23, and then the mothers. And we have two groups of mothers, mothers under 40 and mothers over 40, because the mothers over 40 have very different stories to tell than the mothers under 30, under 40. We are a story-based program, a theater story-based program. So we try to inspire our students to express their own experiences. Now, we give them many disciplines they can do that in, and they choose. They can write and perform about their lives. They can create music about their lives. They can be part of a dance presentation about their lives. We have visual arts. We have video. We also have stagecraft, the people who design our set and build our set. And then we have stage managers, who are the students who are keeping us all on time. And all of this culminates with a week at the Market Theater Lab and a presentation at the beautiful theater there. So, and at the curtain call, there's 150 people on stage. It's a very big operation, particularly when we're going to and from the theater, because, as Gail Johnson always says, we have to leave with the same number. We have to arrive back at the Haven with the same number of children we left with. She says, it doesn't have to be the same children. I just want to get the numbers right. Of course, kidding. But we are busing 2-year-olds down to the Market Theater. So we have to be very careful about everybody's whereabouts, where they are. And it takes a big operation. It's my team of 23, plus we have a lot of other people. It's fun.
A lot of admin. Okay, lots to unpack there. I'm glad you ended it with fun. Lots to unpack there. So let's just take a step back. So you say, I understand you give them a large variety of sort of art disciplines. Do you guys facilitate that? Do you guys have other artists coming in and sort of workshopping them and so forth?
I built a team.
Just tell us a little bit about
There's
that.
a Zimbabwean artist who lives in South Africa called Timbile Tashuma. Timbile and I build the team. We use our network of people we know. Part of the essence of the program is that the team is binational. It's American and African. So the teaching artists are getting a cultural exchange, and I try to pair an American teacher with an African teacher. It's important that we have a Zulu speaker in the classroom. There's just certain concepts that the kids and particularly the moms will understand more easily if they're presented in Zulu. So it becomes a cultural exchange for the teachers. We try to vary
Yeah.
the profile of our teachers from people who are very accomplished theater makers in their own. So we've had several Tony Award winners. The Tony Award is the highest award you can get on Broadway, including me, come and teach, along with other
Yeah.
people who are maybe
Yeah.
younger in their
Yeah.
teaching journey. So we have a diversity of life experience even amongst our teaching artists. And it's a wonderful thing. It forms like a troupe of teachers. And, it's quite wonderful. Sometimes I'll have a Broadway actor who's never taught before, but really wants to, will come and I'll partner them with a very experienced teacher who can teach them how you write curriculum, how you, all those things. You need training in pedagogy, how to teach. But it's also fun to bring in people with different backgrounds. So we try to really make it a very interesting group because, of course, we're all living together for 3 weeks. So we want to be interested and compatible.
Mm. Yeah, I was actually gonna ask that. So how long does it take? But you say 3 weeks. So is it do you guys usually do
Yes.
this at a set
Yes,
time of the
it
year?
is all
Because this is like
dictated
the
by the
winter
winter school
school
holidays.
break.
And I'm there for a little longer than 3 weeks because there's an advance team that comes a week earlier to sort of set things up so that when our teachers arrive, they don't have to do things like, there's a lot of things you need to do to get ready. So yeah, it's all built around the students' winter break, which I don't know if you know this, but this year was much later. So, for example, I've never been in South Africa for Mandela Day before. This was
Yeah.
my first Mandela Day, which was exciting. I have been there many times on National
Okay.
Youth Day on June
Okay.
16th. But it's usually in that window is when the school break is.
June 16th. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually don't know why they do that. Yeah, I mean, like, the school
I
holidays,
think
I think to my
I think
knowledge
that might be right.
ends next week sometime.
Yeah.
Early next week. My nephews are actually still here. Mm. So what I wanted to ask about so I'm actually quite interested to know. So what type of stories, what type of art are these kids talking about? Yeah, and what? Yeah. Well, we'll
Well,
unpack that, but let's just start off like what type of
their
art are they? What
stories are
stories are they
varied
telling?
because, of course, every person is different. In the class I teach with the teens, we have a class called personal narrative. So they
Yeah.
talk about some aspect of their life. Now, what I really try to stress to the students is that personal does not mean private. Personal can be something that happened to you when you went to get your, coffee yesterday at the local coffee place. It does not have to be, it doesn't mean trauma. You don't have to share anything that you don't want to share on stage with 100 to 200 spectators. So, for example, this year we had funny stories about a woman going to the mall and wanting to deposit cash, and there was no. She got up there. There was a sign. There were no deposits, and some guys started to follow her. And she was very clear to her that they knew she had cash. She just walked up to deposit cash and couldn't. And then sort of meeting another man who kind of offered her a ride and
Yeah.
having to choose between a ride with a stranger or these three men who were really closing in on her. And she told it very humorously, or another story about a young man whose best friends went to a party one night without telling him and whatnot. Then we had a young woman talk about being diagnosed with HIV when she was 10 years old in 2011 and how that happened and what that felt like. Then we had another young man who's perceived as a bully at Nkosi Haven. He's a strong kid. He's probably he's 20, and he's tough and he's strong. And he told a story about his 11th birthday, about being bullied on his 11th birthday and making the decision to become a bully so that no one could bully him anymore. And it was a very provocative story because you rarely hear the bully tell the story of how they
Sure.
became who they are. And it was very vulnerable
Yeah.
at the end because he
Yeah.
realized that what
Yeah.
he has
Yeah.
sacrificed is any ability to be vulnerable or to have support in an emotional way. So the stories really vary. When you're talking about the music class, they wrote songs, and so their personal experiences are much more poetic. They're wrapped into lyrics and notes, and their personal experiences that they're communicating about are, we might not know what the experience is, but we know how they felt. Same thing with the dance class. We had two dance teachers. One was a Broadway choreographer, one was an African choreographer. So the African choreographer really did a very interesting dance about the role of men in a traditional African village, as opposed to the role of women, sort of looking at gender roles in African villages. The Broadway choreographer did a dance of a man. He's asleep and he's kind of dreaming of his future and trying to dream of the limitlessness of his future. And then he wakes up and has to reconcile, that he has big dreams, but how does he get there? So, they're all very personal, but some of them are very abstract and some of them are much more, are less abstract.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that's one of them were actually using humor as part of their storytelling. And I'm actually quite interested. So, from what you're saying, it doesn't seem like most of these art expressions are rooted in like very deep, dark, emotional, like pretty much coming from a very, very, very dark place. Is that because I sort of want to follow up on that question. I mean, because you've been doing this for 15 odd years. Has there sort of been a shift in how people are sort of processing having HIV and how they're expressing it over the years? Has there been some form of change leading up to 2025?
I will say that, I've also grown in the 15 years, right? Everybody grows with students. I think when I first came in 2011, I expected the kids to talk a lot about two things: HIV, AIDS, and apartheid. And the two things that I found from the beginning that they didn't talk that much about was HIV, AIDS, and apartheid. They would actually, and back then they would call apartheid before. That's before, and before always meant before 1994, or whatever year we look at as the end of apartheid. HIV/AIDS, they would talk about more because I told them that I was a person with AIDS, and for most of the kids, maybe all of them, I was the first white person they'd ever met who had it. So they were really confused by that. To them, it was an exclusively black disease, and I would have to bring in my pills and show them my pills, and then they'd bring in their pills. So it was more like, it was very almost like practical, like two people with AIDS, like gossiping about our experiences of it. But I actually think there's value in that, right? Like, oh girl, I took that pill, it made me sick. Try this pill. You know what I mean? We would sort of swap war stories a little bit about how we navigated. And I find, look, the community is filled with joy. It is filled with light. They are so funny. They really are. And the moms too. They're riotously funny. And then every now and then one of them will want to write about something very, very personal. I just never want, as a teacher, for kids to feel like I'm coming in and saying, please write about your trauma. I'm not a therapist. I'm not running a group therapy session. I'm actually not qualified. If someone goes into a space where they need therapy for what they're talking about, I don't possess those skills. I can help them turn their experiences into a really interesting story audiences want to see. And that's a different thing than therapy.
Interesting. Here's another question I want to ask on that. You're mentioning like a lot of mothers and children, dads. Are there any fathers involved in this?
The answer is yes. There are a few.
In Nkosi Haven?
It would be glib of me to say no. There are none. There aren't a lot. The kids who do have fathers, for example, I had one kid really who I don't. It's not a kid it's a child I know. But he's not a child I've ever taught. I don't know him as well as the others, but he sought me out. And he said, can you come here? And I said, sure. He wanted to introduce me to his dad.
Yeah.
It's very important to him that I meet his father. So the kids that do have fathers with whom they have relationships, those relationships are very important to them. I don't usually know the details. I don't usually know the details of why the child is not living with the father. I assume there are reasons. I assume that if the father could provide for the child, he would be. So I don't, and I certainly don't judge. I mean, life is hard. for many of the kids, I have
I hear what you're saying.
become a
I
father
hear what you're
figure,
saying.
right? Because I've known them
Yeah.
for 15 years. So if they're 17 now, I held them when they were 2 years old. So I've literally, and I talk to them during the year. They all have my number. We text, and I try to, being a responsible role model for loving, boundaried adult malehood is part of, I think, the job. And I also impress that upon my male teachers.
Very, very, very interesting. I know that it's interesting how you say like that sense of community, how you guys sort of swap war stories and pearls and stuff like that. That's very interesting. I know there's a lot of therapy in community, a lot of healing, and if you still put art on top of that, that's art's another form of you know, you can literally. I mean, art. It heals me because I'm a visual artist by, I guess, by trade or whatever, and I
Yeah.
do that. And many people do that. So that's actually fascinating, man. That's really fascinating. Let's actually jump into the show on the that was held now on the 17th. So over 130, 150 student or people. That is substantial. So can you just give us an overview of like
Sure. Well, there
what the
is each
musical is
class
like
is
and how does it
generating
work and so
content,
forth?
and we engage a director who's with us from the beginning. It's a very hard job because they're engaged to direct a show that doesn't exist yet. So they visit the classes to see what work is emerging, and their job is to figure out, oh, that could be a collaboration,
Interesting.
or oh, this
Interesting.
piece would be so interesting after this piece, etc. So, for example, this year, the video students did a video about hair and the importance of hair to Black African culture, but also specifically at Nkosi Haven, how they really are into hair, but the boys and the
Identity.
girls.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the visual artists did sculptures made out of hair that turned into elaborate wigs that they modeled for us. It was very interesting. It was all done with wire and hair. So putting
Wow.
those two things together,
Wow.
and neither class knew
Yeah.
that was happening, but the director saw it and said, "Oh, this is great. We'll put this together." That director this year was a guy named Paolo Opala. It's his third year with us. Paolo works a lot with William Kintridge and the Center for the Less Good Idea in Johannesburg, a very, very world famous company. And so Paolo really puts it
Yeah.
all together,
Yeah.
sort of pulling from what the teachers are pulling from the students. So in a sense, if you think, it's almost like the teachers are pulling work out of the students, and then the director is behind the teachers pulling work out of the teachers to pull it all together. So it doesn't have a narrative. It has no narrative, but it has a shape.
Fascinating.
It does have a shape to it. And always the toddlers stop the show and the mothers stop the show.
Fascinating.
Always. And all the toddlers do is come out. This year they came out in sailor suits and marched, and everyone went
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It actually that it. I mean, it makes sense. You want to do the young ones first, and then sort of. So I'm interested. How long will the is the production?
The
What's the
running
what's the
time this
entire
year
length
was
of the
about,
production?
I think it was 84 minutes. We like to keep it at 75, 78. So it was a little longer this year than ideally it would be, but it was 84 minutes, I think. When you're talking about kids and moms, like under 80 minutes is better, but
Yeah.
you do the best you can. And this year, a few pieces ran long, I think, including mine. So I can't point any fingers.
Mm.
It happens.
That is very interesting. That is very interesting, especially as you are very disciplined on the amount of time. So is there a break in between and
It's
all of
pretty
that? Was it
go,
just
go,
like
go. And then now that
straight
the
up
show
like
has
80
happened,
minutes?
now I've got some work to do. I'm back in New York now. I've got, very boring work to do on the finances to tally up everything you have to sort of account for everything, because one of the things that I think makes this program different, Wesley, is because we're an American program, we're rather well resourced, and so we can do a production. We can get things that the teachers need to create these stories with their kids, and the thinking behind that is a teacher wants to give their students something they don't already know. All of these kids are experts in deprivation. They have master's degrees or doctorates in deprivation. What they have not experienced is abundance, and a situation where they say, I have an idea, and someone says, great, let's make that idea happen. That's a great idea. But so, I fundraise for it in America, and as you know, the economies are quite different. So you can do a lot more in South Africa with American dollars than I ever could here in America. But that means when I get back, I've got to account for all those American dollars, because in a month or so, I have to turn all my books over to our accountants, and we have to make sure everything. And this is, I think, a beautiful thing as we're coming to the end. Our bookkeeper for the program is a 19-year-old who I met when he was 3. And a few years ago, he said, he said to me, I think I'd be a really good bookkeeper. Can you teach me how to do the books? And I said, yes. And he handles all the cash when we're there. He's the guy, and he does it perfectly. And this is a life skill he can take forward. A bookkeeper can work, So we really try to instill life skills.
Yeah. There's plenty of work for that. Yeah. Okay, so I have just 2 remaining questions. This is great. The one is sort of like to do with well, I'll get to that. But I'm interested to know, because like you say, you also guys have a visual art like class and stuff, and with all these elaborate costumes and so forth. Are any of these artworks for sale? So when the people come, do people be able to buy? And how does the sort of audience support?
I'll answer first the one specifically about the visual artists, and then I'll answer the question about the audience support. So we have in the past, for the visual artists, done an exhibition in the courtyard of the Market Theater complex, which is beautiful. There's a beautiful courtyard, and sold work. And some of the students have sold work.
Yeah.
Often, the visual arts teachers, I think at the behest of the students, sorry, when you work with kids, you get a cold. They imagine a much more of a theatrical way of presenting visual arts, and it results in work that's harder to sell. That's the case this year. I don't think these works necessarily would sell. In general, with the support, we ask that anyone who's interested in supporting Arts Inside Out, the best way to do it is to support Nkosi Haven. We really have become one thing. Arts Inside Out and Nkosi Haven are basically, we're just the arts program at Nkosi Haven. That aspect of Nkosi Haven is quite well funded, but Nkosi Haven really needs support. It needs support to feed its residents, to buy them clothes, to fix some infrastructure. Nkosi Haven needs your support. So if you're inspired by what you hear, and a little bit makes a big difference. If you've got 100 Rand to give it to Nkosi Haven. We'll take whatever you can get, because, and I'm living there for a month every year, I can tell you that they handle their money very well. And if you give, the money really goes to the moms and the kids. There's not a big administration. It's not eaten up in other costs. It goes right to the residents, and they need it.
Interesting. Dick, this is sort of in closing, man, and I feel I need to ask this. I actually spoke to another lady that does a program to do with that's focused more on women. She's also based in the States, and I asked her, I mean, like, look, man, the global politics is changing rapidly, actually daily, especially I'm talking specifically in the States, and a lot of red tape and a lot of craziness going on there. Do you think this new regime, this new U.S. government, is it going to impact Nkosi Haven in a negative way? In terms of fundraising?
Yes,
Are there more doors closed and so forth?
I wish I could leave you on a hopeful note and tell you I don't think it will. I think it will. Not just in Nkosi Haven. I think it will impact many, many NGOs and aspects of South African and more broadly Sub-Saharan African organizations and governments. And I hate to say it, Wesley, it's a painful thing to talk about and think about, especially at 5:30 in the morning my time. But it's really a manifestation of a kind of racism that never went away, ever. It's never gone away. I mean, you know this. And so it's somehow permission has been granted, not just here, but in other places, to act on that racism and to really dig your heels into otherness. And well, it's us and them, and they're not getting what we have. And it's a very ugly sort of impulse. I mean, spending so much time in Africa for so many years, I'm always astonished at friends of mine who I love, who are very smart, asking me, well, what are Africans like? I'm like, what does that even mean? I mean, there are a lot of Africans. I said, they're just like here. They're people. There are a lot of people, and there's funny people, and there's thoughtful people, and there's challenging people, but there is very much an idea of Africa as a monolith, as one thing. It is Africa, and what that one thing is black, and in the American mind. And right now we're in a really bad phase of things that are black being like, we've given enough to that. And we're tired of supporting that and tired of feeling bad for being white. Very weird world that's turning upside down. And at 65 years old, I never thought I'd see this. And I'm not quite sure how to deal with it, but I'm doing my best.
That's actually a very honest shift. Actually, I wanna continue talking politics now, because I'm not going to, but sort of in closing, this is actually fascinating to me, to see how it'll impact, because I know on the flip side of it, I know that I know from my personal side and my network and so forth, that a lot of people don't always like to be. I'm talking organizations, so forth, want to be self-reliant. So I'm not saying this is a blessing in disguise. I'm not saying that, but to a degree, it sort of pushes a lot of local organizations to sort of look for alternative funding and support and so forth, which might not necessarily always be a good thing, but it's here and it's happening. And sort of in closing, my brother, man, and this is fascinating, man. Thank you. I guess like moving forward, man. I mean, 15 years.
Well,
I wasn't say what's the next 15 years gonna look like,
I think
but like
you
next
asked a
year
few
and
good
the
questions,
year
Wesley, I
thereafter.
must say. I think the next phase for Arts Inside Out, I think Timbile Jashuma, my partner in this, who's, as I told you, Zimbabwean, but has lived in Joburg for many years. He went to uni in Joburg at Wits. I think Timbile will take much more of a leadership role in Arts Inside Out. And it will be more his vision, I think, next year than mine. I think I have fulfilled my vision. I think the best use of my talents is for me to become a more active and energized board member at Nkosi Haven, and to try to come up with strategies to deal with what we were just talking about, the ways in which this shift in funding and in perception might hurt Nkosi Haven, to see if there are ways I can use my network here to protect the organization and sustain it, make it sustainable for another 15 years, because I really love the moms and the kids there. They are my second family. I always tell people here I have 30 wives and 110 children you don't know. And I want to be a good provider for them. And as a board member, see if I can figure out how to keep them safe in this time of change, and let Timbile do the arts inside outness of it all.
Fantastic, man. Dick Scanlan, thank you lots for coming through, my brother. You say it's just less, about 5:30 your side, it's still pretty early. It's actually just 11:30 on my side, so my day is actually well on the way. This is a fantastic initiative, man. I wish you all the best for the future. I will publish this thing most probably early next week, because I still got 2 more recordings to do for the week. And then what I do, I chop it up into shorts, the shortened video format, and I run with that on all the social media platforms. And I'll definitely tag you on the various social media platforms when everything is done. And this was fantastic, man. I was once again all the best for the future, and thank you for coming through. It was great. It was great. Thanks, my brother. Cheers, man. Take care. Bye bye. You too. You too.